You know, what keeps every single one of us alive is this incredible, constantly flowing river inside our bodies, our blood. It's our ultimate delivery service and defense force all in one. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the hematologic system to really understand how this river of life actually works.
So imagine you take a vial of your blood and spin it down in a centrifuge. It naturally separates into these three distinct layers. Up top, you've got this yellowish liquid. That's the plasma. Then there's this tiny, thin middle layer called the buffy coat. That's where our white blood cells and platelets hang out. And at the bottom, you have the heaviest components, the red blood cells, also known as erythrocytes. Think of this as our roadmap. We're going to journey through each of these layers one by one.
Okay, let's start at the top, with the plasma. It actually makes up more than half of our total blood volume. And yeah, it's mostly water, about 91%, but it's that other 9% that's so fascinating. It's packed with proteins, electrolytes, and nutrients that are absolutely essential for keeping us alive.
Now, when we look closer at those proteins, what's really interesting is who the main players are. As you can see, the vast majority, a whopping 57%, is a protein called albumin. Then you have globulins, which include all of our antibodies, making up another 38%. The rest are proteins involved in clotting, but for right now, let's really focus in on that big one, albumin.
So, why does albumin matter so much? Well, it is the primary driver of something called oncotic pressure. The easiest way to think about it is that albumin acts like a water magnet. These protein molecules are just too big to leak out of our blood vessels, so they create this constant magnetic pull that keeps water inside the circulatory system where it belongs. This is so important. In conditions like liver disease, for example, the body can't make enough albumin, and without that magnetic pull, fluid starts leaking out into the tissues, causing that swelling we call edema. It's a direct result of losing oncotic pressure.
All right, let's move down from the liquid plasma to the cells floating within it. And we have to start with the most numerous cells by far, the red blood cells, or erythrocytes. These are the tireless couriers, the delivery drivers, responsible for getting oxygen to every single tissue in your body.
And these images perfectly show off their incredible design. On the right, you can see that unique donut-like shape. That's called biconcave. But look at the left. That's a red blood cell literally squeezing and folding itself to get through a capillary that is skinnier than the cell itself. This is no accident. It's just a masterpiece of biological engineering.
So here's a breakdown of their superpowers. That biconcave shape, it's all about maximizing surface area so oxygen can get in and out as fast as possible. That flexibility we just saw, the reversible deformation, is the key to reaching the tiniest, most remote corners of our body. And get this, as they mature, they actually ditch their nucleus, basically to make more room for hemoglobin, the actual molecule that grabs onto oxygen. It's all about efficiency.
Okay, now for that thin little buffy coat layer. This is home to the leukocytes, or white blood cells. So, if red blood cells are the delivery service, you can think of white blood cells as the body's super sophisticated security and defense force. They are constantly on patrol, looking for invaders or anything else that doesn't belong.
And just look at the variety in this blood smear. It's amazing. Unlike the red blood cells, which all look the same, the white blood cells come in all these different shapes and sizes. You can see neutrophils with those funky multi-lobe nuclei, lymphocytes. Each one of these is a different kind of specialist with a very specific job to do in our immune system.
So how do we make sense of this whole team? Well, we can split them into two main squads. First, you have the granulocytes. They get their name from these tiny granules you can see in their cytoplasm, which are basically little bags of enzymes ready to destroy pathogens. Then you have the agranulocytes, which have fewer of those granules and are involved in our more targeted, long-term immunity.
So, out of all those different specialists in our defense force, which one do you think is the most common? I mean, who's really doing the bulk of the work? Well, it's not even close. An incredible 65 to 75% of all the white blood cells circulating in your body right now are neutrophils.
And their job is absolutely critical. Think about what happens when you get a cut or an infection starts to brew. Neutrophils are the first responders on the scene. They are professional phagocytes, which is a fancy way of saying they literally eat things. They engulf and digest bacteria, dead cells, and any other debris. They are the frontline infantry in the war against infection.
You know, there's one more key player hiding in that buffy coat, platelets. They aren't even true cells, they're more like little cell fragments. But as you can see in this amazing image, the second there's an injury, they spring into action. They change shape, grow these spidery arms, and become super sticky, all to form the initial plug that stops us from bleeding.
They're the emergency repair crew for our entire vascular system.
So, we've met all the players, but that begs the question, where do they all come from? Well, the answer lies deep inside our bones, in this incredible biological factory we call the bone marrow. And the process of creating all these new blood cells is known as hematopoiesis.
What I love about this chart is how clearly it shows that every single cell we've talked about, red cells, neutrophils, lymphocytes, even platelets, they all start out as the exact same cell. They all come from one common ancestor, the hemopoietic stem cell. It's this one master cell that has the potential to become any type of blood cell the body might need.
Right, so that brings up a really important question. If they all start from the same master blueprint, how does the body make sure it's producing the right number of each specific cell? What are the instructions that tell a stem cell, hey, you, become a red blood cell, and another one, you, become a platelet?
Well, the answer is all about communication. It comes down to these specific chemical messengers called growth factors. It's really cool. As this table shows, if your body senses it needs more oxygen, your kidneys release a signal called erythropoietin, or EPO, which tells the factory to make more red blood cells. If you get an infection, the body cranks out a different signal, GCSF, to ramp up neutrophil production. These signals are giving precise, real-time instructions to the bone marrow, so we make exactly what we need right when we need it.
Okay, so the factory is pumping out all these new cells, and they enter the river of life. But what happens next? You can't just let them circulate forever. You need a system for quality control, for filtering out the old and damaged goods. And the master organ for that job is the spleen.
The spleen is fascinating because it's really like two different organs combined into one. You've got the white pulp, which acts like a giant security checkpoint. It's packed with immune cells that are constantly screening the blood for any signs of trouble. Then you have the red pulp, which is more like a filtration and recycling plant. It's filled with these cells called macrophages, whose job is to inspect every single blood cell that passes through.
So here's the crucial point. Remember how we said red blood cells live for about 120 days? Well, as they get older, they get stiff and lose that incredible flexibility. So when they try to squeeze through the super narrow winding passages of the spleen's red pulp, they get stuck. That's the signal to the macrophages that this cell has reached the end of its useful life, and it's time to be broken down and recycled. The spleen is the body's ultimate quality control inspector. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, you have the plasma providing the liquid highway, all the specialized cells doing their jobs, the bone marrow factory churning them out on demand, and the spleen acting as quality control. You see this beautiful, dynamic, perfectly balanced system that is working non-stop 24/7 to keep us alive.
And that brings us to one final, really important thought. This system is a marvel of precision, producing billions upon billions of new cells every single day. But what happens when a mistake, just a tiny error, pops up in the genetic blueprint of one of those master stem cells in the factory? Well, that single error can be all it takes to throw this entire life-sustaining harmony into chaos, leading to disorders like anemias and leukemias.